consistency that is the key for humanity. As Dr. Carl Jung said in his final book, Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Sky, the flying saucer is the ultimate archetype of mankind. It is the lapis, the philosopher's stone, that symbolizes the exteriorization of the soul and the interiorization of the body, that personifies the next stage of humanity that he called the Anthropos Rotunda. So these fields should be brought together, especially with the extraordinary sightings that have occurred in Peru and filmed and seen in the media in the last few years, and Mexico. There is a phenomenal series of events taking place that way. But the connection between the external and the internal, I believe, at present there is evidence suggesting that the external and internal, this objective, subjective, are coming into a congruence that is the epitome of what is ahead for us, and this is an important subject to play with. As we say with all of our presentations, some of the things we say sound very certain, and we might seem a little bit arrogant here and rather self-confident. We suggest that all that we say is not to be taken seriously. These are suggested paradigms. It's important that we feel free to explore ideas. Explore them with certainty. That doesn't mean that they are certain, but to explore, because that passageway, that language is essential to bridge the inside and make it shareable with humanity. So we're going to look at the field, the multimedia field, in some slides that bring out and we're going to look at the field of grass and the meadows. We're going to bring out some multimedia slides that will illustrate some of the principles that might be significant in highlighting aspects of what we are on the cusp of in bringing science and the shamanic together. The field of entheogenetics is the synergy of entheogens and genetics, and you get indicators of this now in a recent research by Dr. Nichols, who used genetic markers and made assays showing that results to date show that LSD induces expression changes in a relatively small but important collection of genes. Many of these genes influence the way neurons change physically to alter functional abilities in the brain. At least one of the genes is involved in the process of growth and differentiation of various cell types, no less, and has been shown to be necessary for memory consolidation. A common theme of many of the genes regulated by LSD is the process of synaptic plasticity. The genes that LSD affects may thus play an important role in learning and the storage of memories. This is important research which continued in the genomic technologies that gave the microassay analysis, then showed that there's 11 genes specifically that are affected by LSD. As some in the audience might have noticed, that after the acid experience there's a tremendous lucidity, like an intelligence enhancement. Whatever you read just sticks in your brain and you see patterns. But then you might take another tryptamine, let's say psilocybin or DMT, and that's cancelled. Yet there is some congruent state that continues, and many people will attest to that. So this is important research, the field of entheogenetics. Also, hadronic mechanics makes the interaction of molecules completely different by the factor of the fifth force. But this is a subject that's just beginning, and I think many people are afraid to explore this. The first novice, or you could say beginner hadronic physicists, of course, are shy because of the taboo nature of entheogens. And then the scholars of entheogen psychedelics are having their professor positions and may not be versant at all in hadronic mechanics or even dare to go into that subject. So this is a very novel field indeed, which will yield great significance. So hadronic hyperrelativity, revolution for psychedelic implications. Some of the things we'll be looking at is the archaic and modern perspectives of this, from the ancient Proto-Vedic, possibly an ancient Pangaic, shamanic alchemical cycle that was ushered through history and kept by the mysteries of humanity. A revisioning of reality and interrelations. In the background we have a nice slide from one of Ramses' sons in the Valley of the Kings that shows the apis bull upon whose manure grows the Stropharia cubensis mushroom. And here you see it as one of the mystery tools, at least during the times of Ramses. It's a particular hieroglyph that we discovered and has not yet been put into publication as far as we know in the literature. We discovered this in 1995. Now, the Rig Veda, which speaks very clearly about entheogenic plants, and there's 108 plants clearly described, and they're not just described in the Veda, there are traditions like the Kirati people of Nepal, who have also lamas. They at least have 88 of the soma plants, admixture plants. Some of those admixture plants are selective monoamine oxidase inhibitors containing phenylalanine or harmaline. You've got Desmodium giganticum, which is in fact a DMT containing plant, which is called the Sala tree, the tree of ascension. And you've got the Canarian reed, which is figuring in the Asavine twins of the Rig Veda, of the hero twins of the Sarasvati River. You've got the Kusha grasses, which are the Polaris grasses, one of the richest sources of DMT. You've got the Bucova murins, jack bean, which is also rich in DMT, and so forth and so on. But there are admixture plants clearly described in the Rig Veda, as well as Somalata, which is the ephedra plant. And it's interesting that in the description of alchemy, using electricity with lemon acid as the 5 volts, in the Agastya Smita, there is a description with metals of how the Somalata molecule is converted into something else. And this sounds very, very much like the conversion of levoephedrine to dextroephedrine. Now, to bring that more personally, for those of you in the audience who've experienced the difference between MDA and MDMA, you know that the MDMA is much more ecstatic. So that description of Somalata losing one electron, possibly, in the protocols of the Agastya Smita, gives indicators for future research of the ecstatic components, long-lasting ecstatic components of the Soma formulas, usually different essences brought together. Part of this relates also to metals. You find the Rig Veda and the cultures of the Rig Veda along the Sarasvati River. The Sarasvati River Valley culture being some of the oldest archaeological cultures of our history. The site at Mirgara, as you'll find in the New Delhi Museum, is described to be 10,500 to 11,000 years before present, and immediately emerged, fully domesticating animals, having grains, having a writing system, having a shamanic system, having an astrological system, astronomical system, quite accurate time system, aware of precession of the equinoxes, high mathematics, and the art of Soma shamanism, plant shamanism like ayahuasca, by which they claimed that the power to see through the veils of time, to see other dimensions and have contact with the devas, with the star gods, and with ultra-terrestrial intelligences